We've come a long way in the last 12 months since the 2015 show. For those who attended last year, you'll notice a much larger exhibition hall and many more attendees. Well, you will do over the course of the 2 days. And this only gives validation to what many of us already know, which is that the Philippines represents Asia's most dynamic, competitive, and clean energy-focused power market in Asia. And long may that continue. So the tagline for this year's show is supporting the long-term needs of the Philippines' energy market. And all of our speakers and topics that have been chosen echo that. But in particular, our keynote speakers for this morning have been carefully selected to present on that theme from a variety of perspectives, offering you a diverse and highly relevant take on where we can expect to see changes taking place over the next coming years. So to introduce your speakers for this morning, please let me introduce you your chairman, the very distinguished Mr. Wilfredo Bacareza of Infunde Capital.
There's no better time to be in this industry than today. We have witnessed the phenomenal growth of the Philippines for many quarters now, which would be one of the top growth areas in Southeast Asia, probably in Asia, and with it, the insatiable demand for power. And we have witnessed firsthand the evolution of the industry from a very government-led industry, monopoly, with deficits, to a more privately sector-driven, but with regulatory safeguards. And so we see what the evolution of the industry to what it is now today. And as you all know, we have witnessed a peaceful transition of political power a few weeks ago. While we can never predict what this new administration will do, but some will say that change is coming. I don't know what that is. But the important thing is that we need all industry players, you and me, we need to be prepared, we need to adapt, we need to adjust. Because while we cannot predict the policies for the next 6 years, we do know that the structural changes that was planted years ago by Congress. I think 15 years ago, they started the restructuring of the power industry in what is called the APIRA law, and it drastically changed the course of the industry in the Philippines to a more privately sector-led, competitively driven, and resulted and stimulated a more robust market for power. And coupled with legislative support and stakeholder support, so we have seen inroads in renewable energy, biofuels law, and in the future, probably alternative vehicles law, and so on and so forth. That has changed and given birth to an entirely new paradigm that we need to be aware of. In this conference, I am honored to welcome the chairman of the House Committee on Energy, Congressman Reynaldo Umali, sir. Morning. Who has chaired and led the legislative measures to basically stimulate this industry for quite some time now. And he also chairs the Joint Congressional Power Commission, which is basically tasked to oversight the implementation of the IPIRA and to assess any structural weaknesses or any changes that needs to be done in order to improve the system. I'm also honored to welcome a renowned champion for the environment, a true supporter of renewable energy, and which I had the privilege of knowing the senator up close. She is unparalleled in her record of excellence and the stellar stewardship for the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Lauren Legarda. Ma'am, good morning. With a highly evolving and more privately driven industry also comes the need for more regulation and consumer protection. So we are also pleased to welcome our new chairman for the Energy Regulatory Commission, Chairman Salazar, who will expound on the competitive selection process and how to make prices affordable to the country in general without compromising or sacrificing the goals that we have for the industry. In all of this, the rapid technological advances, the evolution of this sector, that leads to how industry players adapt to the changing environment and how as consumers have now become fully engaged and enabled to respond to the changing times. I am pleased to welcome my good friend Gavin, who will talk about how emerging technological trends and its effect on the industry in general and how utilities are adapting to these technological changes. So again, I'm very pleased to welcome all of you, fellow stakeholders and industry players. So let us begin. I will be introducing our first speaker. He's going to speak about managing and the incentivizing of the future energy mix and their legislative support behind it. Congressman Reynaldo Umali represents the 2nd District of Oriental Mindoro, and he's the current Chairman of the House of Representatives for the Committee on Energy, the Chairman for the Joint Congressional Power Commission, the Chairman for the Oversight Committee on the Biofuels. He is a staunch advocate for the use of clean sources of fuel to provide adequate and reasonably priced power to Filipinos. And he has authored several bills, notably House Bill 4393, which aims to institutionalize energy sustainability, conservation, and efficiency, and providing incentives thereof. So we're excited to hear what he has to say. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Congressman Reynaldo Umali.
Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be back in Manila after a grueling campaign. This is, I don't know if, I was asking Wong if it's okay to speak, even if you don't have a voice. Anyway, to the organizers and sponsors of the Third Power and Electricity World Philippines, of course, to my colleague in the upper chamber, Senator Loren, and to all of you present here, a pleasant morning to all. Power is an important part of our lives. Now more than ever, power has become a necessity as it is an integral part of our industries and even of our personal lives. Our industries, from light to heavy, from agriculture to manufacturing, to service-oriented industries like tourism, BPO, as well as healthcare, cannot operate without adequate and stable power supply. Indeed, our lives and our properties are increasingly more dependent on electricity. Many of our necessities are dependent thereon, like our cell phones, which cannot work if not charged. We will swelter in heat without electric fans or air cons, especially in this extreme summer heat. Our induction cookers and rice cookers will not operate without electricity. Needless to say, the way we live greatly depends on power and, of course, the quality of power service provided by distribution utilities. However, much as we need more power to support our growing economy, there is need to ensure that we have the right energy mix to support the economic activities, especially in the light of recent disasters brought about by extreme weather conditions, largely caused by global warming. Hence, it is imperative that we consider alternative sources of power and the quality of fuels to be used in generating capacities to meet the growing demands of the economy. Mindful, however, of the need to keep electricity prices affordable, there is need to review government policies and/or decisions made on the use of cheaper but dirty fuels like coal. There is also a need to determine the true cost of coal power to take into account its cost on the environment and on the people's health. Lamentably, the Philippines rely on coal despite the country's commitment to greener sources of fuel. Notwithstanding our government's commitment in COP21 to reduce our consumption of coal, the DOE's portfolio of approved coal-fired power plants will bring energy mix to about 70% coal versus all others come 2030. So why coal? Because coal is cheap, it is suitable as baseload because coal power is not intermittent like solar and wind. In a developing economy, we need sufficient power supply to energize our industries, and coal power is the cheapest source and most affordable to electricity consumers. However, while coal is certainly cheaper than other fuels, coal is the dirtiest of them all. Mind you, coal may actually be more expensive if you factor in the true cost of coal power on environment and health, particularly in combating ill effects of pollution, most especially air pollution, which has deleterious effects on population, especially children, pregnant women, elderly, the infirm, who are all vulnerable to respiratory illnesses. More, we now feel the extreme weather conditions that air pollution causes. Global warming is really upon us now, and during this year's El Nino, we recorded temperatures as high as 37.5 degrees Celsius in Manila, according to Pag-asa. I can only imagine how many Filipinos had so far suffered from heat stroke. Yes, we will spend more on healthcare as more Filipinos will get more sick. Currently, the DOH has a budget of 124.2 billion pesos, and if we do not stop using dirty fuels, we will end up needing larger budgets for healthcare or sacrifice the quality of healthcare to attend to the growing number of sick people. Let us not forget Yolanda and Nona and other extreme calamities, which rendered many Filipinos lifeless, homeless, and without power, and damaging to a great extent our infrastructures. On the other hand, Philippines have other cleaner sources of fuel like geothermal natural gas, biomass, and renewable energy sources that are indigenous and will not cause a drain to our foreign reserves. While Philippines seemingly continues to rely on coal and other forms of fossil fuel at the moment, I cannot overemphasize the important role that renewable energy will have to play in balancing the energy mix. Today, within ASEAN and APEC neighbors, Philippines can boast of highest renewable energy share in its energy mix, standing at 39.9 as of 2015, according to DOE and British Petroleum Review. Close in second, of course, is New Zealand at 37.4. Among the other larger and more developed countries, China has 9.9%, USA 5.4%, Australia 5.9%, Russia 5.8%, and Canada at 27.2%. But this will not be for long unless we harness our renewable energy potentials. Yes, the Philippines is very rich in renewable energy, and there is more, and there is a lot more to be harnessed and explored. So I urge both the government and private sector, particularly power industry players and investors, to invest more in renewable energy for good reasons. First, The legal and regulatory framework for renewable energy is in place. Under the Renewable Energy Act of 2008, RA 9513, the government gives fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to investors engaging in renewable energy. It also aims to initiate growth in rural areas because rural areas are rich in renewables like hydro, wind, solar, and geothermal. Under the feed-in tariff or FIT, investors will get substantial returns for generating electricity from intermittent renewable energy sources. Second, practicability and the desirability of renewable energy in an archipelagic country like the Philippines abound, considering that wind turbines and or solar panels can easily be installed or deployed in smaller capacities, even at household levels. Notably, we see many street lamps powered by solar panels. Imagine the savings we can derive from transmission and distribution, as well as amount of electricity streetlights consume. Reportedly, the American Aerospace and Defense Company, Lockheed Martin study on replacing streetlights with solar-powered lights yielded substantial savings amounting to $221,000 because conventional streetlights cost more to them for a period of 20 years against solar-powered lamps. Also, houses can now have solar panels which they can use to save on electricity cost. Even malls now use solar panels in their roofs in order to generate additional power. Imagine, idle spaces before, like roofs of houses and or establishments, have now become useful for generating and or saving electricity. Indeed, renewable energy devices in our homes and businesses contribute to the pursuit for greener solutions in the Philippines. Thus, without hesitation, we undertook to develop renewable energy programs and projects in my home province of Oriental Mindoro. This is not to mention the ongoing 76 megawatts of renewable energy projects consisting of 20 megawatts of hydro, 40 megawatts of geothermal, and 16 megawatts of wind power against a power demand of 42 megawatts in 2015 versus only 28 megawatts in 2013. So a 50% increase in our demand. In fact, Oriental Mindoro is now even exporting to its neighboring province, Occidental Mindoro, some 4 megawatts of power. Yes, opportunities for renewable energy projects abound in Philippines because many areas in the country are still underdeveloped. And the resources are just idle, waiting to be tapped. To be sure, for example, SPAG areas offer a lot of opportunities for renewable energy projects because they are not connected to the grid. SPAG areas may be too far from the grid, which will require tremendous investments and or entail a lot of transmission cost and or wasted power. Bringing renewable energy projects in SPAG areas will help them become self-sustaining and more productive. By relying on indigenous energy sources as their primary and or secondary sources of electricity. Likewise, micro-renewable energy programs utilizing rooftops for household and even for industrial ecozones are potential areas for investments. Hence, I challenge DOE and or the National Renewable Energy Board to develop programs catering to the requirements of households and ecozones and provide incentives therefore, and not just rely on grid type and big plants, solar plants. Needless to state, investing in power projects in the Philippines is very enticing because EPIRA itself decreed such projects to be profitable, noting that all power costs are passed on to consumers. That is why in energy, The regulatory environment provides for power supply agreement and/or feed-in tariff system. Of course, you very well know that PSAs are agreements between GenCos and DUs reviewed and approved by the ERC in accordance with its mandate to ensure reasonable rates of electricity both for the consumers and power producers and distributors. Rates put forth in PSAs are generally based on three factors: capital recovery, operation and maintenance, and fuel recovery costs. PSAs therefore ensure GenCos have sure returns for their investments. For consumers, this also means, of course, lower electricity bills. PSA therefore presents some form of a win-win solution for both GenCos and consumers, as the former gets sure returns and the latter pays for lower electricity costs. On the other hand, the feed-in tariff system for intermittent renewable energy sources, widely used for renewable energy sources, FIT system pays generators a cost-based price for power, for the power they supply to the grid. This means that per kilowatt hour, a FIT-eligible generator receives payment for power supplied to the grid. The prices differ across the type of renewable energy source, among them wind, solar, or run-of-river type, hydro, and even ocean power. These sources have priority connection to the grid and are prioritized on transmission, purchase, and payment by grid operators. Feed-in tariffs are long-term schemes that do not go below 12 years. For example, Burgos Wind Farm was given 20 years FIT rate at 8.53 per kilowatt hour. Although the rates are subject to review, reviews are meant to ensure that the current rates are competitive. FIT rates are designed to owners of renewable energy projects, as FIT ensures that they have guaranteed pay for every kilowatt supplied to the grid. Even the government benefits because it does not have to institutionalize tax incentives. Investors get paid reasonably without government subsidies. In the end, the FIT and the PSAs are instruments in bringing reliable and reasonably priced power to every Filipino home. So let us transform the Philippines into a regional or even global center of excellence when it comes to using green energy. We need to invest more in natural gas, in biomass, and in other renewable energy technologies, because clean power is the future of the industry. I believe that the unusual and extreme weather phenomena that we are now experiencing are results of our excessive use of cheap but dirty fuels. Must we wait for hotter and drier El Niños or more torrential floods? I believe this is the right time to invest in renewables because we are feeling the pressure due to the intensifying disasters. But this is also the right time to invest in renewables because the Philippine economy is bullish. A developing economy means that there are more industries being built that need more power, and there are ample undeveloped spaces waiting to be developed. Of course, renewables are not perfect. It is not enough to just rely on one renewable source, lest we risk outages or shortages. Solar power, for example, can only be generated if there is adequate sunlight, while wind depends heavily on the quality and strength of wind passing through the turbines. The power output of wind can vary greatly. One day, they can generate huge amount of power. Tomorrow, when the wind is weak, of course, there could be zero power. These sources can vary widely depending on factors that are beyond our control. Hence, we need other sources of fuel that can provide us constant power, but they need not be dirty. We can always tap cleaner sources like geothermal, nat gas, biomass, and hydro to supply us with clean power. Let us march towards that bright and clean future that renewables and clean energy sources offer us. On that note, I bid you thank you and more power.